I've interviewed over 500 SDRs as a hiring manager in tech sales. And there's one mistake I see over and over and over again that always costs people the job, even when they're qualified. Most candidates have no idea they're doing it, and it kills their chances within just the first 10 minutes. This mistake is simple. Candidates spend the entire interview talking about why they're excited about tech sales, why they like the company, why they need a career change, but they never prove that they can actually do the job. This happens because we view the SDR, BDR role in tech sales as entry level. So we think that just being driven enough and having enough motivation is going to be enough to get us hired. The reality is this industry is so competitive that us managers aren't just looking for motivation, drive, and desire. We're looking for capability. We're looking for skill. So as a hiring manager, I know that you know the right things to say in an interview. I'm not just going to ask you, do you handle failure well? And are you driven by money? And are you driven by success? Because anyone can tell me yes to those things. What I'm going to be indexing for is how coachable are you? How well do you take feedback? How well do you handle failure? And I'm going to be looking for specific examples from your life that you've actually done those things rather than just take your word for it. When you're interviewing, you probably think as long as I show them I really want this job and I'm fired up and ready to work, they're gonna like me. But the reality is that I'm looking for evidence and proof that you're already the kind of person that is going to succeed on my team. By the way, if you want help on how to prepare for these tech sales interviews with exact responses and scripts and templates to use with the questions they're going to ask you, then click the link in the description below to get access to a free training that's going to show you step by step how to do all of this. So in your interviews, you need to make sure that every interview response you give, you're demonstrating capability through past proof of you having done that thing. We live in a world where there's so much information out there that as managers, we know that you know the perfect things to say when we ask you certain questions. And so to make sure that your answers are genuine and that the managers actually believe you, you've got to come with evidence, facts, and data of real stories from your real life before answering these questions. The framework you can use when answering these questions is quite simple. It's called the 3P framework. It stands for perspective, proof, and plan. Perspective covers what your mindset around that thing or that topic is. You want to bring in some theory of how you view whatever they're asking you about. Proof is going to be that actual story with a real example, with names, numbers, evidence, and then plan is going to be how you are going to take what you learned in the proof section and apply that as an SDR at their company. This is going to help the manager see you as one of their sales reps because you're going to use some proactive, assuming language there, which I'll break down for you in a second. When you're using the 3P framework, what I'm looking for in your responses as a hiring manager is first off, confident communication. I'm going to be putting you on the phones with prospects in high pressure situations. I need to know that you are an effective, confident, and clear communicator, even to the degree that if you were to mess up in an interview, I would rather have you be confident about it, take ownership of it, and laugh it off than try to act like it didn't happen and you start to get insecure and not very confident. So you have to project confidence and the ability to communicate clearly in all of your responses. The next thing I'm looking for is specific examples that show your ability to take ownership and your ability to quantify the impact you have regardless of where you are. This is because I need people who are super coachable, super humble, and want to learn and grow. A common misconception that reps have when they join a new sales team is that they have to be perfect. I know you don't know how to do this job. I am going to train you to do the job. And so if in the interview process, you can demonstrate to me that you're someone who's humble, you don't care if you fail as long as you learn something and you always get back on your feet afterward, then that is the profile of candidate I'm looking to bring onto my team. The second thing I need to make sure you understand is the actual value you bring to a team. As a high performer, I need you to think about the things I care about. As a manager, I care about pipeline generated. I care about us hitting our team goals. I care about the team getting better. And so I don't care if you were a dishwasher, if you were a receptionist, or if you were in the medical field, wherever you come from, you have a quantifiable impact in your role. Otherwise, you wouldn't be working in that job. And this is another thing to think about as you're trying to think about how your role applies to sales. Every job you do, you're either making money for a business or you're retaining money for a business. An example, as a bartender, You're literally bringing money in every night through the amount of drinks you sell and through upsells, stuff like that. So you're generating revenue. Well, what if you were a janitor or a custodian? Well, you're retaining revenue for the business because you're keeping the facilities clean and nice so that all the clients come back and are happy, and you're making sure that whatever business comes in that building stays in the building. So I don't care what you do, you're either generating money for a business or you're retaining money for a business. And you have to think from that perspective. And so when you're responding to these interview questions, I need you to have that business ownership mindset that you can quantify the impact you make on whatever role you're in. Lastly, I'm looking for a problem-solving mindset. I'm looking for a mindset that can look ahead and say, here's where I am, here are the challenges, here's where I need to be. How am I going to get there? And that's why the 3P framework is so effective, because it encompasses all three of those things I'm looking for. Let's look at some real world examples of actual interview questions you'll get asked and how to apply the 3P framework to them. So one of the most common questions you'll get asked when doing SDR interviews is, how do you handle failure? And it's because there's failure every single day in the SDR role, and we need to make sure you're someone who is tenacious, you're resilient, you're not going to give up, and you're going to be able to endure the hardships of the day-to-day in the SDR role. And so to use the 3P framework, you're going to start with perspective. What is your view of failure, right? And you want to show them that you have a very positive view of failure and that you're not afraid to fail. So this might sound something like, yeah, my take on failure is that it is essential for growth. I've failed a lot in my life, and I'm telling you, every single failure I've ever run into, I've learned from it and I've grown from it. So I'm someone who's not afraid of failure. I don't like failing at the same thing twice, and I always try to learn the lesson from the failure, but I'm someone who embraces failure. So that all sounds great, but now you need to give a real example and some evidence that you've actually lived that perspective out in your real life. So what this might sound like is something like this. An example of this is in high school, I wanted to play on the varsity football team. I was only a sophomore at the time, so I knew I had a lot of work to do to get there. And I actually worked out with some of the juniors and seniors to try to push myself and kind of rise to their standards. Ended up trying out for the team, and unfortunately, I did not make the varsity football team as a sophomore. And it was discouraging. It was definitely something where my ego got rocked a little bit. But in retrospect, I'm so thankful for that failure, because what ended up happening is I was able to go on the JV team as a starter, was able to break some records on that team. And because of my performance, I was much more competitive for the varsity team. Instead of measuring myself against the standards of the juniors and seniors, I actually went and got one-on-one coaching to really push myself to become better. And in that coaching, I got demolished. I got torn down in the best way possible. I learned so much through finding my limits and figuring out that, most of my limits that I put on myself are all mental, and that I was actually capable of achieving much more. So once the season rolled around again and tryouts rolled around, I tried out as a junior for the varsity team and was able to make the team, was able to play as a starter, and we were actually able to secure a national championship that year and the following year. And so as an SDR, and this is where you would pivot to making this relevant and contextual for being an SDR on their team. I know I'm going to come in and there's going to be a learning curve, and I'm someone who's not afraid to get punched in the mouth. I'm okay with not having all the answers, but I'm not okay with not giving something my all. So I'm going to be the scrappiest, hungriest, most absorbable SDR on your team, because I really want to win. And I know to do that, I've got a lot to learn, and I can actually learn a lot through failure. That's how you respond to that question. And that gives me, the manager, your perspective of why you think failure is actually valuable. You give me real proof that you are that person with that perspective. And then you've tied the bow on it by putting this in context of being an SDR. And so now I know you're not going to be someone who craps out on me 3 months into the role and gives up because you ran into some hardship. I'm able to conclude that based on your answer, you know how to handle failure well. So now that you get the gist of what the framework looks like, we'll look at two more examples. One being, are you a team player? You're going to get asked this a lot, because while sales is very much focused on your results, your quota, your performance, it is a team sport. You're going to have teammates next to you that are helping you get better. You're helping them get better, and making sure that you're a team player is very important to us managers, because we want the whole team to win together. So what this might sound like is, so first off, my take on teamwork is that it is absolutely essential to high performance. I've always been someone who has been involved in team sports, and I can tell you confidently that I would not be where I am today without others around me pouring into me and without the ability for me to pour into others and all of us get better together. So there we go. We just hit perspective and they're going to see like, okay, cool. Yeah, you've got a good team-oriented mindset. Now you want to provide evidence that you actually are a team player. So you might say something like, an example of how important being a team player is to me is that I will often inject team-oriented things into things that by nature are not team-oriented. I'll give you an example of that. In my current role as a busser in our restaurant, it's not a very team-oriented sport, right? Like there's not really anything that needs to happen between the bussers to accomplish our individual jobs. But what I noticed when I first came to the restaurant is that everyone kind of was not happy to be there, right? There was kind of this general energy of, this is my job, I clock in, I clock out. When I came into the team and I started building relationships, I started getting to know people, we actually kind of built this team culture around just having fun together, but in a competitive way. So we would do things like we would keep track of how many tables we bussed, the average time it took us to do our dishes, and we actually got management to set up a competition for us where we were able to win AirPods if one of us was the fastest of the month. This is an example, something like this, right? I'm making this up on the fly. But the whole idea is that when I came to the team, there was not a team culture. And then because I'm such a team-oriented person, we were able to install a team culture there that made the job a lot more fun and actually made us perform better. And so as an SDR on your team, I am absolutely looking forward to plugging into the team culture. I'm big on wanting coaching, wanting feedback, wanting to grow. I understand that's not always only going to come from management. It's also going to come from me surrounding myself with the top performers on the team, learning all I can from them to be the best rep I can be. And then for me to actually push that knowledge down to the newer SDRs that come after me so that we're all winning together. That kind of response is going to be taken very well by a hiring manager because, again, you've shown to me that you are a team player in your mindset. You've given me proof of that, and you've told me how this is going to be relevant as you become an SDR on my team. The final example we'll look at is, give me an example of a time you've received coaching. You might also get a question that's like, give me an example of a time where you and your manager disagreed. Anything like that will fit here. And basically we'll start with the perspective. Yeah, my take on coaching is that it is absolutely vital for my growth. I love coaching. I've always been someone who's wanted to surround myself in those environments where I have mentors. And actually in my own life, I don't just get coaching on my job or back in sports, for example, but I actually have someone who mentors me one-on-one in my personal life, right? And so I started to enter adulthood and I didn't feel a lot of clarity around who I was becoming, what my purpose was, who I wanted to be. And so I actually found an organization that has mentors in it. And I've been meeting weekly with my mentor, who's a 52-year-old man who has started to walk me through things like personal development, mission, impact, who I want to be when I'm older. And that mentorship has grown me so much to where now I do feel like I've got a very clear vision of who I want to be in life. And it's because of the coaching and the mentorship. And so I'm always someone who is going to invest in coaching. I'm always going to appreciate coaching because I know the only way for me to get to where I want to be is to find people who are already there and learn from them. So as an SDR on your team, I'm going to be very hungry for your coaching, right? And there is a balance of being independent and self-sufficient, but any coaching that you're willing to pour out to me, I'm going to soak it up like a sponge. And I'm not only going to rely on you, but I'm also going to make sure to build relationships with other people in the org, whether those are my teammates on the SDR team, maybe some account executives that have done really well and promoted from SDR to AE, as well as some of the upper leadership like the VPs who have been doing this for years. So I'm going to surround myself with all the learning resources I can. I'm excited to plug into a culture like that. Same thing. They're going to be like, wow, that's perfect. Let's go. You're not just telling me what I want to hear, but you're giving me proof that you're actually that way in real life. And you, again, are giving me the context needed to show that you're thinking about the role in the next few weeks when I hire you. Remember, hiring managers do not hire only for desire. We hire for competence and capability. Stop talking about what the job can do for you. Start talking about what you can do for the job. Use the 3P framework to give specific answers with numbers, data, real-life stories, and future pacing to show them how you'll actually make an impact on their team as an SDR. And you'll walk out of every single interview knowing you nailed it. Now, if you want help walking through interview prep with mock interviews and proven scripts and frameworks, click the link in the description below for a completely free training that's going to walk you through step by step how to prep for these interviews and crush them.